Hello, 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 y'all. I am so excited. Welcome to the Dr. Kiki Ramsey Show. Y'all, this one right here, and I know I say it all the time, but I am so excited for the topic that we are going to be talking about how men can become allies in the workplace for women. Listen, and I have none other than my brother, my colleague, my friend that is going to be joining us, Dr. Jonathan Johnson, right after this. Dr. Johnson.
Dr. Kiki.
I am so freaking excited that you're here. First of all, y'all, I'm just going to give y'all some context. Me
Yeah.
and Dr. Johnson went to school together. Shout out to Berea College Mountaineers. Woo woo.
Right, right.
In Kentucky. And I'm so excited. We just actually got to see each other for the first time. Well, actually, not a long time because
We reconnected this year
we
after like a couple of decades.
exactly, which is ridiculous, right? Now,
I
only up
know,
in a
I
couple of
know.
decades, man. You trying to make us sound real old. We ain't that.
Well, at least a decade. At least a decade.
At
How
least a
about
decade. All right,
that?
one. One,
Yeah. Yeah.
so,
Oh man, time flies though. Time flies. But you know what? We
it
catch
does.
back up like it was like yesterday.
Like it was
Yeah, like no time passed at all, which is so
exactly.
good, so
I
so
know.
yeah, like you are my sister,
Yes.
and we
Yes.
went through the struggles, you know,
Woo!
you
Struggle
know,
was
this
real.
the struggle was very real, but with a lot of people, that we went to school with, we have a bond that you
Yes.
just can't even imagine, for this little small old liberal arts school in Kentucky,
Right.
and
In the
so
middle of nowhere.
I know we're from everywhere, but yeah, we have that bond, and so yeah, you're gonna be my sister for life,
Sister for life, right? Brother
right,
for life.
right, right,
I love it. I love it.
yeah,
And so yeah, so we when we reconnected, we also, gone to a conference together. We, and you know, in this whole diversity, equity, inclusion atmosphere, there's so much work to be done. And so I'm so glad that we're actually talking about this topic because just even looking at the news, all the just recent stuff that has happened, and just it's tough. So really talking about how men can become allies to women in the workplace, I think is a really important topic for us to kind of get into. So before we jump right into that, tell us a little bit about yourself, so that we can know.
yeah. I've spent a lot of my time like this is my for one. This is well, it's it's just awesome to be with you, okay? I just want to shout you out for all the amazing things that you have been doing because
Thank
I've
you.
been seeing you, I've been watching you, and that's how we reconnected, because
Yeah.
I saw your presence that you have,
Yeah.
and definitely just admire the work that you do, and so and it's great to be, I guess, the first guy, get first
Yeah.
male on your show,
Yes, I was about to
you
say that.
know.
Not only are we talking about how men can be allies, you are the first male on the show, and I'm so excited about it. And that's not by design; it's just the way things happen.
Yeah.
Y'all, I be reaching out to y'all. So come on. But this
Right.
is a beautiful way to kick it off for you to be the first male on the show. So I'm very happy about that.
No, yeah, and so I spent a lot of my time in higher education, um, and also and I work for a nonprofit. I start out in corporate too, but I currently serve as the vice president for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging at Planned Parenthood of Greater Texas. And I'm the first person to serve in this particular role,
Yeah.
and yeah, and so I've been all over the country, working in higher education administrative roles, and last year, decided to make another career change,
Mm,
and use my skills that are transferable, and so that I can benefit others. And so, my role really is to provide more inclusive leadership
mm,
across the organization, promote a culture of inclusion,
yeah.
as well as foster employee and community engagement, that really drives diversity awareness.
I
within our
love it.
organization. Yeah.
I love it,
So
which
that's
is
what I
so
do.
needed.
Hmm.
It's so needed. All right, so
Yeah.
tell us your main superpower.
You know, I would say my main superpower. I'm a person centered, individual.
Mhm.
I focus on people,
I agree.
and I realize what my vocation is, right?
Ooh,
Not just what my job is, not just what my career is that I recognize what what my purpose is.
I love
You're
that.
right. And with my purpose, I can direct that anywhere I go. All right. And I think it really applies to the topic that we're talking about today,
Yeah.
understanding what your vocation is, and also how can we assist others to recognize the purpose in others, particularly when we talk about women.
I love it. I love it. Okay, because for me, my purpose is to really help women, across the world to find greater meaning and
Hmm.
happiness and success in their lives, right? So when we
Yeah.
talked about this, I'm like, it aligns so well
Hmm.
because I think it's something that we haven't really discussed a lot of, but it's needed in order
Yeah.
for women to be able to grow in the workplace because we have to be we have to have allies and partnerships and that
Exactly.
kind of thing. So, but let's go back and get some definitions, right?
Okay.
Because I know a lot of people who work in DEI, we understand what it means, but maybe the audience doesn't understand exactly what diversity, equity, inclusion means. So give us a working
Mhm.
definition of it because I want everybody to be informed.
Right. Yeah. So I like it when when we talk about definitions, really getting into the details because
This your
because
higher education mind.
I know, as an educator,
Right.
I used to take the diversity equity and inclusion course, and so there are some definitely distinctions that you need to know. All right,
Mhm.
um, so diversity is just about recognizing, acknowledging differences. We have a diversity of thought, diversity of understanding, diversity within our race, the differences of race between ethnicity. And that's how how we define those things are very different too based
Mhm.
on who we are, how we grow up,
Yep.
right? And
Yep.
so diversity may look different, in the South than it does in the South United States than it does in the Midwest, right? Or in the UK, or
Mhm.
in Asia, right? So so that's diversity, recognizing, you know, our mutual differences,
Right.
among each other, and the value and the quality of it. And I would say like equity, equity is really just, thinking consistently and constantly, identifying, um, and I would say restructuring out the power dynamics. We
Mm.
think about equity. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So it's not, which is different from equality. Equality is like being the same. All
Right.
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 That's how I was explaining to some students. It's about the same. If
Right.
you, I used to use some visuals. Somebody of these egg crates, right?
Right.
And
Yep.
when if you stand up on top of these egg crates, the egg crates are the same.
Yep.
Okay, but it doesn't recognize the diversity within each other. So the diversity to me, that hey, I'm 6'2", right? And somebody
Mhm.
else that's 5'9", we still inside the same crate. Guess what? I'm gonna be taller than that person,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And so equality tries to make us the same height. All right.
Right.
What equity tries to make us the same height, and equality is about that sameness. So how can we get a more of a balance
Right.
within our differences?
Yeah.
Inclusion is about thinking about ensuring that our thoughts, perspectives, our voices
Mm.
of people matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
It's just a simple definition of
Yeah.
inclusion. And what I really appreciate is this definition which I actually added to my job description when I started is because it was just DEI,
Oh,
diversity, equity, and
okay.
inclusion. But I
Okay.
added belonging
Okay.
because that's what our organization
Mm.
needed.
Yeah.
And to me, I think sometimes we get distracted
Mhm.
by the business, by the controversy around diversity,
Yeah.
and I think we take it for granted. We use it synonymously with a lot of other things, but
Ooh.
I think people understand what belonging is. The people
Yeah.
know how belonging feels,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so, it's about, how can we create an environment that you fully engage, you can
Yeah.
be your authentic selves,
Exactly.
that we recognize the full potential of people,
Yeah.
that you can do more than just survive, that you can thrive,
Right. Oh,
right?
yes. I love that.
So
I
that's what belonging is. And I
Yeah.
think if we all can tap into that feeling, that understanding, we can, that's the outcome. When you talk
Mhm.
about creating plans, like for strategic plans for your organization, that's
Right.
the outcome. That's where we want to be. All right.
Right.
And so DE and I can get us to that belonging.
Right. I love that too, because it's like do 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 do, like it's
Hmm.
and then it creates a belonging feeling. I was just at a CHRO conference this past weekend speaking, and I had a lot of conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and even belonging. And I talked about it in the sense that organizations are going to need to learn how to create psychological safety
Hmm.
in their cultures
Yes.
so that people can show up. And I also prefaced it when we talk about people showing up as their authentic selves. We're not talking about people showing up unprofessional, right? And I think
Exactly.
people get
Exactly.
it wrong. I'm like, we're not telling people to come to work and be unprofessional. And
Right.
I'm saying, like, I just think that I think leaders in organizations um kind of think the worst when it comes to belonging, and we say, oh, okay, what if
Hmm.
we create this environment and we let people show up and they just gonna be out off the cuff? And I'm like, that's not even what we mean, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
I'm gonna show up. For example, I'm gonna show up. My biggest strength is zest. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's who I am. Like I can't
Yeah.
help it. So if I
Hmm.
can't show up zesty,
I like that. I
right,
like that.
to the
Zesty.
environment, right, then I'm doing everybody a disservice and stuff like that.
Man.
So I just think that is so interesting. So Tanya Jones, thank you so much for joining us. So she has a question. What if you
Okay.
foster an environment of belonging, but an individual has a hard time feeling that belonging? So Tanya's
Hmm.
saying your organization is fostering an environment of belonging,
Hmm.
but a certain individual has a hard time feeling that belonging. So what do you think about that?
No, I'm like, hey, this is a journey, So I
Mhm.
definitely have people come to me and say, hey, I don't feel like I belong. That's
Mhm.
happened to me before. And so it starts at the top. It really does
Mhm.
start at the top.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
And in the top one, I mean, your senior leaders really have to try to live by example,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They have to promote that. And it's just not about having these conversations, but it's about policies. It's about how can we hire people,
Yeah.
you know, that may assist you, that may affirm who you are, that can allow you to feel like you belong.
Mhm.
And it's about having open. It is about also having these open conversations too,
Yeah. Yeah.
But it really is about these policies, practices, and procedures.
Yeah.
Those three P's.
The
You got
peas.
to have it. The three P's you got to have in the place
Yeah.
um, to really change the organization. Because everybody has different degrees of what belonging means to them.
That's what I was just gonna say, right? Because so I think this is an interesting thing when it comes to belonging. And the question is belonging an individualistic feeling based on like how the person feels about it? So you could, as an organization, be thinking that you're fostering belonging in the
Right.
organization, but if I don't feel it, then
Right.
that's my perspective. So I think that's an interesting dichotomy, right?
Yeah. We got to do our homework
Right.
within the organizations. You got to understand what belonging means for that organization. And
Hmm.
and so there's some work that needs to be done. So yeah, you can do a survey, but you need to sit down and talk to folks too,
That
to
part.
understand what belonging means, and particularly for women, what belonging means for that
Yeah.
organization, for women.
Oh,
So Tania, yeah, a lot of things has to happen, and so if someone doesn't feel that way, you know, definitely I always encourage, maybe because it's just who I am. I'm just like, hey, tell me, as a leader, I need to know. All right. And and I always tell people to come with some solutions too. Tell me how. All
Mm.
right. Don't just give me a problem.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like here,
Yes,
but
yes.
also give me a clue,
Yeah.
at least, and
Yeah.
as a leader, I think I have a responsibility. And that's another part, that I always want to talk about, the accountability piece, so
You talking
it is important,
you
and
talking
as a
about.
leader, you got to.
Le- So allyship, right? So
Yeah.
what is
Okay.
that, right? Because okay, when we talk about allyship, a lot of times people think, oh, white people are the only people who can be allies, right?
Right.
And I just don't think that people have a really good working definition of what an ally is. So
Okay.
share
All
with us
right.
what that is.
All right. So yeah, white people can be an ally, but that's just for race, right?
Right.
Perhaps ethnicity. But if you think about it broader, just think about um, allyship. Just think about social identities.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's just call it that. Let's think it real broad. Let's blow it up. All
Yep.
right. So it's about identifying a social identity group, right? And you're going to stand up and stand with in support of those members of that identity group.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And so that's an ally. And that typically means that, but it's also a power dynamic too. So it
Mm-hmm.
typically means that a member of a dominant group is standing up and beside,
Mm-hmm.
members of that particular targeted identity group. So
Right.
say for instance, like men, arguing for equal pay for women.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that that is so very important. And I
Mhm.
love the definition as well, right? Because I think that in organizations and just across the board, we need people to walk beside us, to stand up for us, to be in a position to elevate us, to have a voice for us, right? I think
Mhm.
that, not talking politics, but in this country, we don't get anywhere without the other person, the other race, the other, you know what I'm saying? We don't get anywhere.
Mhm.
And it's the same way in the workplace, right? Women are not going to get here, get any place without the help of men who are historically in more leadership positions, because that's really what it is. I mean, I work, I have a coaching company, and so we do a lot of work in organizations. And before I do any kind of work, we'll kind of do some research on the company and everything like that. And then one of the things I
Mhm.
always do is I go to the executive leadership team.
Yeah.
And I look at that team and I see who is present on the executive leadership team. And especially if they're talking about they want to really enhance their DE&I be in the organization, I look at the team and I say, well, there's work to be done because,
Mhm.
especially if there's very few women.
Visual representation. Yeah.
Right, right. There's a visual representation of what's happening in that organization
Mhm.
already at the top. And so I then work from here down to figure out, like, all right, well, what are the goals here? If women are not represented and all of those things. But right
Right.
now, more women are represented, but not enough, which is why I think this topic is important.
Right. And I've seen that a lot, too, that you may have a lot of women represented, but they're not in those key roles.
Right. Exactly.
They're not in those key roles. You can see that like most organizations,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
You may have a lot of women in a certain role, but they may not be the CEO,
Right.
right?
Yes.
Women CEOs, are limited. Black women CEOs, just a handful, right? That we know, as
Right.
far as Fortune 500
I
companies.
was gonna say that of Fortune 500 companies, right? Because I'm a
Hmm.
black woman CEO, but we ain't
Yeah.
made
Yes.
Fortune 500 yet,
Right. That's right. Yes. That's right. Right.
right?
Right. Right. And that's what the thing, when it comes to women of color, black women, you sometimes have to feel like you got to do your own thing, right? So that you can be that CEO, right? Because traditionally, organizations have not recognized and appreciated and rewarded you for the gifts and talents that you have, right? And there's nothing wrong with going out and doing your own thing,
Right.
but at the same time, you do have to we do have to think, okay, what accountability we have for the folks, the
Mhm.
talent that we have within our organization. How can we promote women? How can we recognize men? How can we partner with women,
Yeah.
so that they can feel like, yes, it's a place to belong and I can be successful.
Yes, absolutely. And so we're talking about really like gender equity, right? Like we talked about pay and promotions and stuff like that. I don't know, how do you really achieve gender equity, right? Like what I mean,
Mhm.
what what does that look like in an organization?
And I think it's definitely that visual representation.
Mhm.
You got to start out with some benchmarks. You got to have some measures. All right, and it's not about quotas or anything like that, but you have to have that visual representation, because that visual representation of women in those leadership roles means a lot, not only just for the external
Mhm.
constituents, but it matters for the culture that you have within the organization.
Yeah.
So, and it not only for the women within the organization, you know, but for other genders within the organization,
Mhm.
but particularly men, to see women in leadership, and it changes their perspective. It can change their understanding, because they have to engage women in a different way than
Yeah.
they traditionally have with men. All right,
Yeah.
and I always think about, hey, and we have to accept certain things too. All
Right.
right, that we are in a patriarchal society.
We are.
That's how we started. In
Yeah.
the United States, in most countries, is patriarchal. So we
Mhm.
have to first acknowledge our history,
That part.
right? And acknowledge our history,
That
and
part.
also acknowledge the history within our organization,
Yeah. That
right? We just talking about our undergrad. We just elected our first woman,
woman president of the
woman
college, of the
president,
history of the
of
college.
history, more than 150 years old, right?
Oh my God.
And and so it's like, and we've been, and I can say we've been a pretty progressive
We have.
institution,
Yep.
founded by abolitionist minister, and first interracial,
Mhm.
college in the South, that kind of thing. But this is the first time we having a woman,
The
you
first time.
know, right?
First time.
And it would have been great if it was a woman of color,
I would love that.
you know,
I would have loved
yeah,
that.
but we have to acknowledge our history, and I think we don't do that within our organization. So look at the history of the people that have been in power, or in leadership,
Yeah.
and take into account that. All right, then we really have to start doing the work
Yeah.
within the organization, as far as having those policies,
Hmm.
practices and procedures.
Yeah.
We have to have those structures. Are important. They may be boring sometimes, but those structures really guide the work that we
They do.
do, and how we can then also at the same time work on our culture.
I know. Tania talking about Bria Blood. Girl, you
Hey, who know? Oh,
right.
what you know about Berea?
Oh,
Oh,
is this
I
our
know.
is this it? Okay, listen, come through with
Okay,
it. Come
now.
through with it.
Right,
Um,
right.
she
Okay.
did say also she had a really big cultural shock to see more women and people of color in more executive roles in Houston versus her hometown of Cincinnati's. And so it's very inspirational. I would agree. Like when I see that, I love it. Like this CHRO conference that I was just at in DC, I was like, oh my God, yes, we see we I saw so many women in there, and then women of color as well. And I was like, this is a beautiful thing, because
Right.
the research actually really shows that companies with more women on their executive team are actually more successful. So I want to ask you,
Mhm.
do you agree with this? And why do you think that this is so?
So that if you see more women on executive team,
Yeah, that
that.
the research shows that women, when the executive team has more women,
Mhm.
the company overall
Oh yeah,
is more successful. Period. Like in so
absolutely.
many areas.
Well, and I said, I go back to us being a patriarchal company. We fall into these hegemonic, meaning that the same type of thinking, right?
Hmm.
And the same type of thing has been this one of this more of a, masculine type of thinking, right?
Hmm.
And what that turns out, that we don't tap into the EQ, like the emotional intelligence,
Yeah.
right? And as organizations, we may be thinking about our numbers, our bottom line, but the emotional intelligence, also promotes our success, because we're able to think more,
Yeah.
can be more nimble,
Mhm.
can integrate other perspectives, particularly as we have more women that are more consumers, in the country more than men, I would say.
Yeah.
And as well as, how do we really recruit and find these individuals, that are filling in some of these talent gaps.
Yeah.
And so absolutely, I
Yeah.
definitely believe that.
Do you feel like there is hesitation with with in organizations to promote women to these top leadership positions? But because, like I said,
Mhm.
thank you for joining us, Costella. Love you. So do you think why is that hesitation, or is there hesitation there? Because I mean, we just, like you said, after 150 years, like how can you get to 150
Right,
150
right, right.
years? Like,
Yeah, and all these organizations, they, it's just the history, So for one thing, I think there is hesitation because they're not used to that type of change. They don't see when they see anyone besides a man in that position, you know, they don't see leadership. To
mm.
be honest, they don't see leadership because they have not been taught. They have not had those examples, and
But
their
think about it. We
experience.
have women are graduating with
Mm.
more college degrees
Oh yeah.
than ever before at an alarm
Hmm.
at a rate that is like crazy. Um,
Right.
we've shown that emotional intelligence and empathy and all these things are definitely skills that now we're trying to teach men, because you can't just lead by like just hardcore leading. You actually need
Right.
some soft, what we used to call soft skills, to be
Hmm.
able to lead organizations, because it's just we don't have this hardcore world, right, that we used to, that men used to lead by, which is the reason why
Hmm.
I always talk about leading with strengths and stuff like that. So there's
Right.
all this research
Yeah.
that is showing that that's not true anymore, but there's
Right.
still hesitation, and there's still men at the top who haven't allowed that to
Right.
permeate within the organizations.
Right. Some people call that's the definition of insanity, right?
Right?
You you know,
Same
we do we
thing.
do we gonna do the same old thing all the time. We're gonna expect something different. No, it's not gonna happen that way. You gotta do something different. And that's why we need women's perspective.
Right.
And I think that's what organizations are sick with, you
Mm.
know.
Hmm.
And so we need, then we need men, I would say, okay, we are a patriarchal society, okay, but we need men being allies. We need men that are in these roles because
How
they're
do they do
predominant
it?
ones in those roles
How are we
to
gonna do
to to
that?
be allies.
Okay, so how we do it?
Okay, all right. So I think first what I always say, because one of my expertise is about talking about men and gender
Mhm.
bias, and
Mhm.
but it's all about first the men have to do some self exploration. All right,
Mhm.
that's challenging just as
Y'all hear
men.
that? Y'all hear
Okay, I'm just be going to be very honest, right? But it's so important. It's so important to do that. So you have to do some self exploration, and you need those examples of men and women and allies to support men in that. Okay, if they're not there, to do that self exploration about what does it mean to be a man in this organization, what it means to be a male leader within this organization. All right.
Yeah.
Um, Understanding what your privilege has been, within that organization.
Ooh,
All
child.
right.
Mm.
Understand where you could have intervened, to assist women in being successful. So this are some things I think about. Always think about being an advocate,
Okay.
right?
Hmm.
You know, Advocating for someone that that you can push. I also think about being a coach,
Yeah.
okay, which is a little bit more involved.
Hmm.
You're a coach. You there on the sidelines.
Yeah, I
You giving
do.
them the playbook, right? You helping them out. I think about men who can be allies. You know, can be a supporter. Can be in your corner.
Hmm.
I think men can be mentors,
Yeah.
right? Which I think is this more of an intimate
Yep.
relationship, right? Where there's some mutual type of things that go on there. Because as mentors, you have a mentee, so mentees have a relationship within that. Um, as far as how they establish what their relationship is going to be, what the
Yeah.
mutual accountability is going to be, and I think we need to promote career success, career development,
Yeah.
and to me, it's more than just about what those bullet points look like, in your job
Mhm,
responsibilities,
mhm.
or or those things that you can do. But it really is about, what are those transferable skills? We
Yeah,
need to that it really applies, and that's why I say even about um, EQ, more of emotional intelligence. But I think you may be in one profession, right? And because, like I said, I have my own. I recognize what my vocation is. That
right.
means that I can do any. I can transfer these skills in any profession, in
Yeah,
any industry. And I
yes,
think it's if we empower women to think that, don't just think about the job that you are in,
right.
but what leadership skills that you have. If you've done strategic planning, you can do strategic planning anywhere,
This is true.
right? If you do leadership, you can do leadership anywhere, right?
Mhm.
If you have the technical skills, you can do those technical skills anywhere. Or how can you reframe, how you do that? So assisting women in thinking like that
I love it.
will be helpful. Also, I know we don't have a lot of time, but I
No,
got to think
you're
about
good.
the HR piece too. And
Yes,
so
yes.
so developing, how can we remove bias in our recruiting process?
Ooh, yes. Been talking about
And
that all weekend.
yeah, and just it comes down even to the job description, the
Mm.
language that we use. If you ever read some job descriptions, I can't believe we still use, you know, um, like this gender language in our job descriptions, right?
Mhm.
And I see it sometimes in the tech industry. You got to use these verbose, energized words,
Right.
and it
Yes, yes.
sounds like masculine, hard. You got to do this, you got to dominate, blah, blah, those type of verbs, those adjectives. I mean, you know, doesn't necessarily sit well. Someone may be reading that, so like, what? That's not me. That's not my
Yep.
personality, and
Mhm.
so they don't even apply. So
Yep.
we're knocking people out before they even apply. All
Right.
right,
Yep.
and there's some resources out there that can help you
Okay.
with that.
Okay.
I know Textio is one that I've recommended before that you can put it in there, your job description. They can identify some gender
Ooh,
biases.
good. Right.
Um, Onboarding, what is the onboarding experience? That first impression matters. So
Yes,
how
they
can we provide the best onboarding experience, for women, but really for all, but also for women, so you
yeah.
got to do a lot of work to make sure that you're fulfilling some of those things that impression you bring about.
But it's what needs
Um,
to happen, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
Performance management, I think about, how can we make, like when you get your evaluation at the end of the year or whenever you do it, making sure that the voices of those individuals shine through, and that, their perspective is also included. So yeah, it's a lot of things I think we
I love it. No, I love it because I think that too. You talked about also even mentorship, even sponsorship is a whole nother level, right? Going that
can do.
level
Yes,
up, like that
yes.
to me, that's like on that level of allyship. Like I am rocking for you. I'm
Hmm.
talking about you, even when you're not in spaces. I'm trying to
Yes,
help you, you know what I'm saying, help you succeed even when you're not in the room, right? Even when you
yes.
don't ask me to. And I think that if more men were to sponsor women,
Mhm.
and everything. But I mean, even starting with mentorship is a great step because
Right.
I don't think that it happens enough at all.
Yeah, and we got to be selfless. I've been in some positions where I sponsor people, I supervise people, and we can't be selfish. It's like,
Hmm.
man, I don't want to lose that person.
Yeah. Right,
She's so great. I don't want to
right,
lose her.
right.
Like, no,
Let her go.
people can be them best selves, and that may not be with you. All right,
Right, right, right.
So
Ah,
I'll say, hey, yeah, get out the nest, go and do what you got to do. You know.
oh my God. Oh my God. This was so good. You know, me and you can keep talking.
Oh yeah.
Because we were staying up to 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning and hungry.
Right. Exactly.
So I'm so glad. Thank you so much for
We
being
done?
on
What?
this show. Yeah, I told you.
Man,
I
I
told,
was just getting started, man. I'm
I
about to switch
know.
into second gear. I was in first gear.
Look, we might have to come back for round two, right? We might have to come back
Right.
for round two of
Yes.
the show. But no, definitely, this is just such a valuable conversation. And like you said, we just getting started because we can go deep into everything that you said,
Mhm.
because they all have their own compartments of how we
Yeah.
actually get it done. But I think the message is, just from what I'm hearing, is men gotta step up and really, really, really begin to be these allies in the workplace. What is a final
Mhm.
thought that you want to kind of leave us with from our discussion today?
I think if you think about at least three things, accountability,
Mm,
basically taking ownership, for us as men, taking ownership of our responsibility
mm,
for women within our organization. That's looking at our history within our organization and society, and then also you got to take action,
yeah.
as a leader, and individual. And I also think about, that's accountability. I think about restoration, right?
Oh,
And this come out of my experience, thinking about restorative justice approach in the
yeah.
workplace. But so whatever we uproot, we must restore. All right.
Ooh,
And for men in the workplace, the path of healing leads to this paradigm shift, in
yeah.
our thinking, in
Yeah.
the way men perceive, recognize, reward, feel, and affirm our
Mm,
colleagues and women.
yes.
And I think if we think about those two things, I think we can really change, the how we perceive women and how we place women,
Mm.
and affirm women in our leadership.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Costello said EI, leadership skills with a plan, HR language, and onboarding performance evaluation are key. This is a
Mm.
whole summit. Thank you, Costello. We just
Yeah.
on a whole summit. So tell everybody how they can get in touch with you or how they can connect with you.
Yeah, so through LinkedIn, Jonathan Johnson, Jonathan L. Johnson, um, and yeah, Jonathan L. Johnson, PhD. Also, you can reach me at JEDI Leadership. It's Jedi, so it's JEDI Leadership at gmail.com. So I gotta be more official, Kiki. I gotta give me a website. I need to change.
Listen, we
You
gonna
know,
work on it
do my
behind the
consulting.
scenes.
I know. But yeah, Jedi leadership, and Jedi is for justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion.
I love it.
So
I
Jedi
love it.
leadership
Oh
at
my God.
gmail.com.
Thank you so much for being on the show. Hey, you all, if you love this topic, which I know some of you did because you were joining us live, but if you are listening to the podcast, please, please, please share this with somebody you care about. Share this with another man or male in your life who needs to
Mhm.
hear the message, and even women so that they know what to ask for. And speaking of women, if you are a woman who is wanting to know how to balance happiness and also learn how to continue to be successful and walk in your purpose, I want to invite you to the Happy Women Lead Academy. Right now the doors are absolutely open, and I would love for you to join us there, where we do coaching every single month, so that you can grow and we can grow together. All right, y'all, until next time, thank you, Dr. Jonathan, for being on the show. I have appreciated you so much, my brother. Um,
Thank you so much.
y'all, until next time, you go out there and create your own